Welcome to this episode of Film Like a Girl. I'm your host, Catherine Mora, aka Miss Catherine Mora, and this month we're joined by the lovely Nicola Rose. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Welcome so much to the podcast. Thank you for hopping on this chat with me. I'm very excited to get to know you a little bit better and to talk
Yeah.
about. There's a lot that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about your path, your journey as a filmmaker. Nicola has a film that has just been released called MAGNETOSPHERE, so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this month.
Thank you, Catherine. Just glad to be here.
Yeah. So to give everybody kind of a little bit of a background, so you're doing a lot of everything. You're a director, you're a writer, you're a producer, and you're mostly based in the indie space. Like Magnetosphere was your second feature film.
Yeah, exactly. Magnetosphere was my second independent feature film. When people say independent, that can mean a lot of things. It can mean that there is big money involved and that there is in some way a studio involved. It just has a lot of meanings, but in our
Yeah.
case, they are truly independent, which the very negative way of saying that would be it is a film nobody asked for. The more positive spin on that would be it's a film that somebody decides to create from scratch because they feel it, you know, needs to be out there and you hope to connect with people through it. And that's why I make films. It's to connect with people at the other end.
So can I ask, because I did a little bit of research. So you went to Columbia and studied French literature and the language, I believe, and then you went and studied in Paris. Can I ask where your like love for film comes from? Like how you decided to embark on that as a career?
I think this happened in a couple stages because there was a time further in the past when I was like 12, 13, where I got very involved in writing screenplays and writing teleplays, as I guess what they would have
Mhm.
called them at the time, like screenplays for film and TV. I was 12 years old. I got super interested in format and structure of these things, and it was good training for way down the line. I was very prolific. You can't say as much about the content. You wouldn't want me to, but it was a really good exercise in format, in economy, in learning how to write dialogue and jokes, especially jokes for that particular medium. What the knowledge that I lacked at the time, because I wasn't working with actors, was how to cast. And that was something that came down the line. As speaking of business, I ended up working as a freelance casting director, kind of in parallel to sometimes having nothing to do with the films I was making, but
Mhm.
I ended up working as a freelance casting director, mostly in New York,
Okay.
on and off for the 13 years that I lived there. And that was most interesting because it took me into another space of filmmaking, which is the people who are actually going to carry everything in the film and be the heart of the film and be the dialogue and be the essence of everything you ever put down on the page. And it's
Yeah.
all about getting those people right.
How did you fall into the freelance casting, being a freelance casting director?
I feel like this was around 2015. I had cast for free a few projects for my friends because folks started getting wind of the fact that I knew all the like jobbing actors in New York City, which was kind of true.
Okay.
And somebody said, "Can you help me find?" I don't remember who it was or what it was. I feel like this happened 2 or 3 times before I started thinking, I should charge for this. And it
Yeah.
became a side business. Unfortunately, it just doesn't come up much anymore. I would say two of them come up per year, three of them come up per year. I mean, they pay
Mhm.
well when they do, which is really nice, but it's pretty rare that the freelance casting gigs come up anymore because either people cast themselves, which can be good or bad. I kind of
Mhm.
have no opinion on that. I mean, I do it, but I worked in casting. I don't know. You can do it without having been any sort of professional casting director. I don't feel like I was a professional casting director. I feel like I was a freelancer getting paid for it and learning how to do it
Mhm.
really well, which helped me do it for my films.
So you felt like you were kind of learning as you went, like kind of just like you
I
you
am
knew you had the
always
connections, but you kind of were just learning as you went.
This is true of like everything I have ever done, whether professionally or whatever. I'm always learning by the seat of my pants, and I never know what I'm doing. I just have to sort of enter a mental state where I feel I have blinders on and I'm thinking about nothing. Thinking about nothing for some, I've been talking about this for a lot of interviews lately. Thinking about nothing is key for me because
Hmm.
that's when I do everything, that's when I do my best. Like
Yeah.
business wise, creative wise, however you want to call it. It's so often the same thing anyway. They're like tied together. Like making indie films is a business. It's not necessarily a lucrative business, and in fact, I would not recommend it. But if people want to know, because some people have an indie film in them and they just want to make that film, and
Mhm.
quite frankly, they should. Who am I to say don't do it? I can tell you reasons why it's hard, but I
Mhm.
can't say don't do it because I don't think that's the right advice.
When you say thinking about nothing, do you mean just like not overthinking it or just kind of
That
going to like this place, like this like blank space in your brain and just like going for it?
It's so funny you should say that because
Yeah.
it's both things, but for
Okay.
different people. Like for me, it is literally going into a blank space and thinking of nothing and doing what I have to do from that space. And this is incredibly hard to access as spaces go. Like it's almost impossible. And you can
Mhm.
only do it, I think, when your adrenaline is up to here and you have to. It's not like something you can just turn on. Like, don't I wish I could do everything in life that way, but I can't. I can't go get a coffee that way. I don't need to, but you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
whereas sometimes just not overthinking, not thinking too hard, that's something I've been talking about or have talked about with some of the actors, especially younger actors on movies. Like, I think actors in their 20s who are like freshly out of acting school are kind of the worst victims of this
Mhm.
because they've just been through a program that, like, kind of, I don't want to speak for all programs, but what
Mhm.
I've noticed is that while their training may be very good, they are like programmed to overthink. And you have to kind of, as a director, you may not kick people, but it feels like you kind of have to kick them and say, "Don't think,"
Yeah.
just do from the guts. And that is one of the reasons that, as a director, I really like working with really young actors, like your 15-year-olds and your 13-year-olds, because they they have no training. They have the
Yeah.
training of maybe they've done another film. They have the training of maybe I've done stuff in my bedroom for my stuffed animals, and then I, you know, went and got an agent, and turned out that that person wanted to send me on auditions, and I got some stuff. And their training is all on the job. It's much fresher.
So speaking of working with younger actors, let's talk a little bit about Magnetosphere and because the main character, she's great. She's like honestly she's so good.
She's so talented.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what that casting process was like, finding the right young actress for the role?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very difficult.
Hmm.
So, speaking of the casting process, this is not the business of casting that I get paid for. This is the business of casting that I'm doing for my own. I
Yeah.
cast all my own stuff, not because I think, oh, I'm so much better as a casting director. It's because I know what I'm after, and cutting out the middleman just seems like you're making it easier on yourself in that scenario. So, in particular, this casting was difficult because I think for the character of Maggie, who is at the center of the film, there were probably, and I mean on the short list, 7 or 8 good candidates.
Okay.
And that's unusual. Usually you have two, you have three, you have one. It's not, usually doesn't come down to that sort of kind of wrenching situation where it's like, oh, damn. And so, ultimately I picked this girl, this actress, Shaylin Martin, because she just seemed to be able to access emotions in a way that was so unfettered. It's just like
Hmm.
there was nothing going on except somebody who was acting from the absolute guts. And I don't really know how she does what she does. She's just kind of preternaturally able to be like at a snap of the fingers, she's able to be what you need her to be, and she's able to do what you need her to do. And I don't really understand her. And I said to her, which is, I mean that in the best way. I said that to her during, I interviewed her. It'll be up in a few weeks, and it'll be, up on my channels and stuff. And I said to her, I don't really understand you. And she said, yeah, I don't really understand myself. And I was like, yeah, I hope you never do, because that's kind of what's needed in order to, that's, I hate using the word honesty because it's used in such a pompous way. But, because of her performance, everything always felt grounded and everything always felt true.
Yes. No, it's watching it, like, I could feel like it just reminded me so much of being, a teenager and like having those like not fully understanding like your emotions and like what you're feeling and like feeling just like awkward
He
and
never knows
uncomfortable
what's
in your
going
own
on.
skin. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with I think nobody in that movie quite 100% ever understands what's going on except for one
Mhm.
or two people. And I really appreciate that because I
Mhm.
never know what's going on. So it's certainly something that I can relate to.
What inspired the story for this film?
Sure. So, in fact, synesthesia was not something that I had been seriously thinking about, but it was in the back of my mind. And I had seen a beautiful film. I've mentioned this film in a lot of interviews lately. A film called Confetti,
Mhm.
which is by the director Anne who is from China, and it had to do with a girl, slightly younger child, in this case with dyslexia. And I loved how the camera depicted her dyslexia. Like she'd be looking at something and she'd be looking at a character on the board or whatnot, on the chalkboard, and a Chinese character would like turn around and you'd realize, oh, we're in her brain now. And so, my goal for this, besides depicting, setting myself the goal of how can I depict synesthesia, like auditory and visual synesthesia, because there's many kinds,
Mhm.
but aside from how do I depict that on screen, it was how do I keep us in the main character's mind the whole time? So we're basically like always looking out from her. We're never really looking at her. We are, but we're experiencing things as her.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's really it's both. I guess it also depends on like the emotions that she is herself feeling and what
Oh
she's
yeah.
seeing because it's both beautiful but like at times just very sad as well.
Yeah.
Every time, like when she sees the clouds,
Oh
like
yeah, like the
yeah.
tangle over her face, and she sees herself she she sees herself only in a problematic way.
Mhm. The scene with her and her father where she asked him like why am I ugly and the
Mhm.
whole like wiping the ugly out of her eyes. It's just such a beautiful, both like beautifully written and just a beautifully acted moment.
Thank you. I love that
Yeah.
scene. I'm surprised that
Yeah.
people have not reacted specifically to that one more. I see the reviews coming out and I am so gratified because they are lovely. I didn't
Mhm.
necessarily expect that. I didn't necessarily expect like anything in particular, but good grief, they're really good. That particular scene is so important because it might be the only scene that establishes dad as a serious person. Like he's
Mhm.
not just loony and crazy because he, again, not to spoil, he is trying to direct this community theater production of Pirates of Penzance that is absolutely going off the rails, which happens with
Yeah.
probably half community theater productions anyway. But poor guy is losing it progressively, and he's very manic, very goofy at his best, but he just goes nuts. And I think it's the only scene where he's very calm and still and considering why is she in pain and how can I help her. And it's a side of him, I think it shows so much. First of all, it's just so well acted, but it shows so much range from Patrick McKenna playing the dad, who is like I said, a goofball the rest of the time, but all of a sudden here he is in the position of protector, and he's the one, really the first and only, who says, you have something special. I don't necessarily know what it is, but I am aware of it, and um, you need to stand up for yourself and feel good about yourself, which is easier said than done. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still learning that one. I'm 37, so it's like, it
And I
takes a
think
minute.
yeah, no, and I think that's part of what makes that scene so beautiful. Like beautifully acted and also there's a really well done. I feel like as like somebody who's an aspiring writer herself, like finding the balance in a scene where you have kind of like a humorous part to it where he's like, should I get your mother? And
Yeah.
she's like, the moment where it almost feels like she's blaming him. She's like,
It's
it's
just
not mom's
it's
fault. And
not
he's
mom's
like,
fault I'm ugly, which is not what she meant to say, but
it's not
it's
what she meant to say, but it's like a funny moment, but it's still like it doesn't take away from like the emotional weight of it.
thank you for saying that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Finding that balance, like as a writer, is so hard to do. And so I think because of that, like, and the whole like feeling uncomfortable in your skin. Like it is a lot more heavy when you're a teenager, but it's still something that we can feel, especially as women throughout our lives, you know?
Yeah, and it's it's funny you should say that because the scene was actually inspired by another scene. The film is called My Golden Days. Arnaud Desplechin is the director. So obviously French movie, and it has to do actually with this young guy and his meanderings, and it would be hard to describe a plot on this one because it's French, therefore hard to sort of sum up, but it's French cinema, man. But anyway, I saw this movie. I don't remember. I was traveling and I saw this movie, and there's a scene where a girl asks her dad, "Why am I ugly?" And I don't remember the direction it goes in. It's not the direction this goes in, but I just thought it was such an interesting premise for a scene. And given, the way the bullies have bullied her and making her think maybe
Mhm.
she's ugly, and, you know, obviously she's beautiful, but you never believe for a second that she thinks that. She's not the kind of beautiful that goes around being like, yeah, I'm super hot. You know,
Yeah.
like, no way. That would be the bullies.
Yeah, the bullies. Gosh. And that's another thing too. Like you have such a the way the cast plays off of each other, like not just the
Yeah.
kids, like everyone has like really good chemistry with each other on screen. Like whether it's like the antagonistic chemistry, like the bullies with Maggie,
Yeah.
or Travis and Maggie and her sister, like everybody just has such great chemistry with each other
They
in this
do.
film.
They work so well together. They kind of they are more than the sum of their parts. It is hard to explain. And I think, obviously it's casting. It all comes down to casting, but it's weird. With this one, it's so delicate because it's a very silly and goofy movie that's also sad and that's also saying something that's important. And so the
Mhm.
balance is so delicate, and everything revolves around these people reacting to each other and playing off each other, as you say. And if you had cast even one wrong actor in that, it would have, I don't think the movie would succeed.
Yeah.
There was one guy who did a review of it, absolutely gorgeous review, like better than I thought I deserved, which I will post soon. I haven't even processed it yet. It was so lovely. It was the kind of notice you always want to get. And he was
Hmm.
saying, you know, considering this film, considering all the different parts of this film, this should not work, but it works beautifully. And it was just like, oh my God. Because that was what I was thinking the whole time I was making this thing is, this shouldn't work. It's too goofy, it's too silly, it's also too sad and too full of teen angst at it just feels as though I knew it was working because the actors were right there and I could tell they were making it work because they were just the right actors. But this is my point.
Yeah.
Without just the right actors, you are screwed. And I was so lucky. So, so
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why it worked as well is because, and this is not to say that like this is the right way to go for like everybody who's
Yeah.
like aspiring to make their own film, but like because you wrote the script
Yeah.
and you were directing the script, so you knew what needed to happen in this film, so then you were able to cast the perfect people as the casting director as well.
And it's really, really difficult. And, I
Mhm.
think people, going back to business, because I know that's really kind of the point here, there are people who, I think there's an interesting double standard for women in this as well. There are people who tend to kind of look down upon folks, and I'm going to get back to the idea of women who wear a lot of hats, whether it's wearing a lot of hats because they just want to, or wearing a lot of hats because of necessity, which is, by the way, kind of the name of the game of independent film. You kind of have to
Yeah.
do anything you're doing, it's because you have to. Like,
Hmm.
almost anything you're doing is because you gotta. No choice. You're making this movie on a budget of $15. It's like, come on, no
Yeah.
choices are involved. I always say it's a budget of $15, and then you'll recoup one. But maybe if by listening to this podcast, you will go rent the film because it is available many places, which I will get to later. Footnote to self. But back to your original, back to my original thought, I think there is an undue amount of derision toward people who wear a lot of hats, especially women. The thing is that in the indie film industry, in the small corner of it that I occupy, I noticed that the same sort of, I don't want to quite call it vitriol, although it comes close, the same sort of, I don't quite have the word in my head, the same sort of condescension and
Hmm.
contempt, there we go, is not leveled toward men unless the men are just overtly terribly bad and incompetent at what they do and it's really obvious. But
Hmm.
if you are, as a woman especially, I don't know if people realize they do this, and I have a feeling it applies to all aspects of women in business who are in some position of power that they put themselves in or that they rose to. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that if you choose to wear many hats or if you are wearing hats, you tend to take a lot of crap for it. And I don't know why. It's
Yeah.
something I've noticed. It's, you know, it's not, it's sometimes it's very subtle crap. It's not like, oh, you suck. It's like somebody saying, maybe it's time for you to stop producing the film so you can just focus on the
Hmm.
story, which
Yeah.
is absurd because producing the films usually means you put in like 35K and, you know, as an investment because you're always putting in your own money. um it Producing has no effect on your like writing, you know, these are done
Yeah.
at different times. Or maybe you should it's I used to hear back when I acted, which I have not for many years and I don't miss it. I used to hear maybe you should stop acting in the films that you direct, as though
Mm.
it was somehow difficult for me. It was actually very easy for me. I found the challenge nutritive, for lack of a better word. I found it very refreshing. I liked doing both things, but it's almost as though people have this reflexive, it is weird. It's
Yeah.
almost, I don't see it happen toward men. It's like, oh my God, he writes and directs. He's an auteur.
Yes. No,
Um, he,
exactly.
he's amazing. He does everything himself. Whereas if it's a woman doing it, it's like, you know, maybe you should just focus on writing. Or maybe you should just focus on directing and let a professional editor do the editing. And, you know, maybe
Hmm.
they don't realize you are a professional editor, something like that.
Yeah.
It's assumed that you just want it to be all about you, rather than maybe this woman you were talking to actually has these skills and is actually utilizing them because they're good.
Yep.
And maybe in my case, it also saved the production like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that I did these things. I don't know how I got onto the wearing many hats thing, but people talk about it in business and wearing many hats that you don't really want to. I don't think anybody like wants to. I think it's something that happens of necessity because you know you can do this particular job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like also to jump a little bit on what you're saying, that when it is like let's take a male director who's a writer director and a female director, like female who's a writer director,
Yeah.
that the male writer director will get more grace if he screws up than
Mm-hmm.
the female writer director will. Like, I don't know why the main thing that's coming to my mind right now is maybe because of Barbenheimer.
Oh yeah.
Christopher Nolan, when Tenet came out,
Exhibit A.
it
Yeah.
was not the most like well received film, but it wasn't Christopher Nolan's fault.
No.
You know what I mean? Like everybody's like, no, Christopher Nolan, like he's great. It's just that the audience, you don't understand what he's
You don't
doing.
understand his art.
You don't understand what he's doing. But let's say like if Barbie had been bad,
Yeah.
that probably would have been the end of
End
Greta
of Greta
Gerwig's
Gerwig's
career.
career.
Yeah,
Fortunately, Barbie was
it was
terrific.
amazing.
But I wondered about that going in.
Yeah.
I wondered, is this it? In
Mhm.
a way, I was a little sad because I would love to see her do more, you know, Ladybird level stuff. I would love to see her kind of, I feel like that's her sweet spot, is like these sort of
Yeah.
indie, um, gentler, smaller pieces. But, you know, what are you going to do? It's like if I were offered to direct Barbie, I would go on and direct more Barbies
Oh
too. It's
yeah.
like, duh. This is an obvious business choice.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's another thing too, where it's like when as a woman in the business, you are offered an opportunity like that, like if you don't take it, chances are you won't get another opportunity offered like that again. Whereas like if a guy turned it down, because like, no, I'm still focusing on like this my own independent project that I'm doing, or like he'll be like, oh, actually, but I have this idea. Why don't you guys buy this script from me? Like there's more options on that side of the table.
I have seen another, it's a tiny micro version of what we're talking about, but there are
Mm-hmm.
certain random humorous comments you will make as a director while you're directing a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, about like, oh, I screwed up. That's actually a great example. You screw up and you say something kind of funny toward yourself. And I have done that any number of thousands of millions of times. And I will say something, you know, oh, blah, blah, blah. I can't think of it, but it's just like some sort of slightly humorous, self deprecating comment.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody reacts, which is fine. I'm not,
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting anything. I figured, well, they're all at work and it's just not that funny. And then I went on a set where a guy directing, who was not particularly a funny person, was just a guy, said the exact same thing after he made the same exact inevitable screw ups that everybody makes. And everybody's like, ha, 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 ha. And I
Oh
was like,
God.
oh, oh, because they're listening.
Yeah.
Um, that's the difference, is that your actors listen to you. No matter who you are, if you pick the right actors, your actors listen to you. But your crew, if you pick the wrong crew, and I am not speaking of a specific crew here because I do not wish to be in trouble, but your crew could not care whether you live or die a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where you need the most respect, and you need the most help, and you need the most backup. And I have been lucky to work with some of the best crew on earth. But I've also seen the other end of that spectrum at close range. And I remember one actress who whom I will not identify, but who, because it would make it all very obvious, but who
Mm-hmm.
has a way of noticing absolutely everything, who took me aside one day and kind of said, I have a question. Like, we were having a glass of wine and she said, I have a question. I was like, sure. And she was like, why is your crew rude to you? And the crew was almost all men. My there's a person who was several ranks below me in the camera department, whom, if I forgot that he was getting sharps, you know, when they're making sure that all the points of focus on screen are sharp, they call it sharps.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry if you already knew, but like for the folks at home.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was getting sharps and I just kind of forgot that he was doing that. I was like, in my mind, oh yeah, we're past the sharps, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to call whatever I was calling, and he turns around and he's like, no, you don't do that. And I remember just standing there like, I was in a position where I did not own the project. I was for hire, and this is not
Okay.
somebody that I can just fire the ass of
Yeah.
right on the spot.
Yeah.
Which is what you would do in another situation, bearing in mind that you do have to have that person. Therefore, you know, you were slowing down your own production and possibly jeopardizing it by firing that person.
Right.
But the amount of behavior as a woman leading anything, that you, the amount of behavior like that you get, you know, the amount of times that stories abound that don't line up with reality. Rumors abound, and, you know, oh, you know, she has fits, she has tantrums. It's like, I was never even unhappy. What happened? You know,
Yeah.
like, this
Yeah.
is fairy tales. This is not, oh yeah, it might be, oh, I was a little upset one day and I expressed I do not like what's going on, but it turns into that you were somehow kicking people, and, you know, it's like you're screaming and crying and having menopause right there
Oh
on
my
the, I don't know.
God. And then you can have a male director who is yelling at everyone, who is putting like
It's for
ridiculous
his
restrictions.
art. It's
It's
for his
ridiculous
art.
restrictions on set, like ridiculous like
He's a
schedules and
genius.
everything, but
It's
he's a
because he's a
genius.
genius.
He's a genius. He keeps getting work. Like it's I would love to work with him, blah blah blah. Like you said, a woman like just doesn't smile one day, or maybe she's like a little annoyed about something, and oh no, she's too much. She's a
There
problem.
there was a moment on a film where I was pissed about something and I barely raised my voice, and I was told again by the menfolk that I was yelling and angry, and there were many witnesses to this who did and could say that did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing how it turns into that, and it all goes back to the eternal like tired trope of like women as hysterical and
Mm.
what can you do except keep trying to make the work that you're trying to make, whether that's through traditional business, whether it's through creativity, whether it's through, I don't see this as anything but business, by the way. It's
Mhm.
just that it's not a traditional business because you're more likely to lose money in independent anything than to gain it. The advantage of independent film, I think, same as the advantage of like self-publishing over traditional publishing, is that, well, there's many, but like you don't have to wait. Um, Magnetosphere, for example, took like 3.5 years from concept to the time that we got released, which was just 2 days ago, I want to say,
Mhm.
and it's been a blur. So it's been a lot of interviews, but the thing is, that's rapid. It doesn't sound it, it didn't feel it, but it is fast. Whereas if I were still waiting for A-listers to like maybe or probably not read the script, I'd hear sometime in 2027, oh yeah, so and so is maybe not attached. Um,
Yeah.
these things don't get made because people are waiting for permission. That's the
Yes.
number one thing. But they're waiting for stars that have no interest in that it is of no value to them to participate.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously there's plenty of exceptions. There's folks who will come on board and be part of your thing, and that's wonderful, and it's happened to me. But I think for the most part, this idea that nothing is valuable in terms of in terms of cinema, that's nothing is valuable unless it's got A-listers, is kind of sickening.
Yeah. Yeah. For me,
The
it's
computer sense
weird
that.
because I have like some background in marketing,
Mm,
and I can understand from like a studio's perspective, like why they want the A-listers. Because it's like, oh, they can reach people on social media and people already know
yeah,
who's going to be in it. So people come see it for them specifically. But then at the
right.
same time, I'm somebody who very much endorses the idea of like casting unknowns.
Well, what they would say is cast the biggies in the main
Hmm.
roles and cast
Yep.
the unknown in a small role. But the biggies don't need to do main roles in indie
Yeah.
films.
Yeah.
And so the indie films aren't receiving money, they aren't receiving backing. You have
Hmm.
to be very, very lucky and have basically friends and sometimes just total strangers, acquaintances who believe in you enough to invest in what you're doing. And I've been lucky enough to have that twice, because you cannot, as people say, go fund me a feature film.
No.
You can do that with a short film. If it's $15,000 to do a little teeny, and even then, fifteen thousand
Yeah.
bucks. But like, let's say that number for a moment as though it means nothing. It's $15,000 to do a teeny. Maybe you can crowdfund that. I believe you could crowdfund that. It
Hmm.
would be hard, but you could do it. Um, Assuming that you don't come from money. And by the way, if you want to go into independent film, I highly recommend coming from a ton of money. That is your best bet. And be born a man.
Yes,
Come
that
from tons
too.
of money.
Yes, go back in time, ensure you were born a man, and ensure that you were born into wealth.
That is the recommended method for making independent film. I was saying to I'm so sorry, I'm sounding terribly negative, but
No,
it's all true.
it's true. It's stuff that you've experienced as well, and and another thing too, because like for this podcast, like this is to not only like celebrate and elevate women who are in the industry, but it's also to like educate women who want to be in the industry, and this is like important things like that you know people listening to this podcast should know about. Like
Yeah.
if you're somebody who wants to be in the film industry, like you probably already have an idea like it's going to be hard as a woman, but like to know exactly more or less what you might end up facing is like crucial, I think.
I wish I had known a lot of what I would end up facing. And I don't think it was all because I was a woman. I don't think
Hmm.
that's the necessary, and that's necessarily the thing to point to for everything. That would kind of be reductive.
Hmm.
Sometimes there are other reasons. Sometimes people are just difficult. Sometimes
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with who you are, or nothing to do with you at all. Frequently it has nothing to do with you, I think. But yes, I was lucky in one sense, which is that the experiences of doing my early shorts were so positive, because I mean there were negative things that happened, but they were sort of what's the word, they weren't important.
Mhm.
They were things that you could just brush aside. Oh no, this camera person is, mean. Okay, we have to replace them because they're being nasty to people on set. Whatever, that's not that on a short film that will not that will not jeopardize the production. It might add a day, and
Mhm.
that might be bad, but then you raise another 2K and you are good. And there's
Yeah.
always a solution come in the clutch, and somebody will help out in that
Yeah.
situation. Um, no, I did have problems with this and that, but basically it was a charmed existence doing my first four, for my, really nearly all my films. So I was very lucky for the very, for a very long time, really not feeling as though anything negative was coming my way. I think part of that is because directing, I'm just talking about directing, just the one
Mhm.
hat, none of the other
Yeah.
hats right now, because the other hats I don't really want to wear, but
Mhm.
writing I would wear. The other stuff, producing, well, that's basically giving money, which, and I don't do the kind of producing that now I have, speaking of business women, I
Yeah.
have people who actually do the producing, who do the financials, who deal with legal, who do the line producing. Those are the producers. Um, and I have one male producer too, but two women, one man who do all the actual business, all the actual accounting, all the actual business side of this film. That is not me. I am not a producer. I am a producer in the sense that I gave money to the film,
Yeah.
which one day I may see some small percentage of back. Um, I recommend that people go watch this film for that and many other reasons.
Yes.
Every rental, helps us break even, and then once we break even, then we start paying other people, and it's glorious. Get their residual, not residual, sorry, they get their checks for $3.95.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just kidding. It can happen. It can happen
Yeah.
really well. I think a lot of people actually are watching this film. That's the
Mhm.
impression I'm getting, because there have been a lot of influencers, and people with large followings, and deservedly so, such as yourself, who have actually like said yes to talking about this film, because I think because it hits a nerve. It's, yes, it's a comedy, but with it deals with girls and women with neurodiversity, which is something that's super underexplored in the media. In fact, neurodiversity, and particularly synesthesia, is not really represented in the
Yeah.
media that much. There are a couple others. There was Musica, which was a studio film that was released last year that had to do with somebody with synesthesia. Um, there was, I don't know, there was an episode of something that had to do with a guy, like a pianist in World War II, who could see like the colors of the notes he was playing on the piano. Um, Especially neurodiversity influencers have really wanted to do something with this, which I've been so grateful for, because it's not the traditional method of publicity that would be, you know, let's get reviews and go on podcasts, and
Yeah.
which is great. You want to do that, but it's interesting that this has another angle we can hit as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's going back to what we were saying before, like, yeah, there's something just so relatable and special about the story of this film. Like, I
Thank
feel,
you.
and it goes to the writing, it goes to the cast and the work that they did,
Oh yeah.
that watching Maggie, it's like I could almost see a little bit of myself, like teenage Catherine in her. Like, I remember feeling like that awkwardness and like that like discomfort in my own skin, and it's, I think because of that, like that's something that we all went through. So it just, it hits close to home, and it just feels like very nostalgic's not the word I'm looking for. It's like
No, that's
and bittersweet's not the word. Like a mixture of like bittersweet nostalgia, I guess.
I did want it to feel like a memory, because to me, it's
Mhm.
not about my life. It's very non autobiographical. People
Mhm.
always assume this may be a woman thing again. I don't know.
Maybe it's
They
probably
always
a,
assume it's
yeah.
about your life. I'm like, really, no, my life is not that interesting. But my first film was, uh, it wasn't about my life either, but it hewed a lot closer to experiences that I'd had. Like, people know from the same way that, oh, this girl studied in New York, and then she studied in France,
Mhm.
and then for a while not that I not that I love spending time talking about it, but I was a professional puppeteer for several years, and that's something that people sometimes like want to talk about. And all of those things are true of the protagonist. Actually, she's not like a professional puppeteer, but the protagonist of my first film, my first feature film, Goodbye Petrushka, all of those things are true of her. So it was naturally assumed by every critic who reviewed it, plus everyone who knew me, that I had just put my life on the movie. And there's a fine line there. I didn't put my life into the movie. I put some circumstances that people could recognize from my own life into the movie. But beyond that, I think it would be pretty boring and really navel gazing to put like, I've heard people say like my life would make a great movie, and that's probably true, but you would have to modify it so much to make it actually work as a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's for like non-film, non-writer people,
Mm-hmm.
because the phrase "write what you know" is very well known. People know that
It's
phrase. But I
it's
feel like,
problematic, but it's true. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I feel like when people who like are not in cinema, who are not writers, hear that phrase, they think that means like, like you were saying, like just put your life on the screen, put your life on the page,
And
when it's
people do it all
actually,
the time, and a lot of the time it's like
it's like, yeah, no, because when it says write what you know, it means like take bits and pieces of things that you know, but like turn
yes,
it into a story, make
you
it
are
something else.
absolutely correct. What it
Yeah.
does is it allows you to, oh gosh, what is the word that I'm looking for? It's a jumping off point. It's not actually meant to be taken literally, as you
Hmm.
said. It's a jumping off
It's a
point. It's like,
metaphor.
it's almost a metaphor. It's like this girl going to Paris. That's interesting. Fish out of water in a different country. That's
Hmm.
interesting. The puppet thing. I don't know that I really had to put that in, but this is hindsight is 2020. But you know what? It makes the film way more memorable than if she like, I don't know, just fell in love with a guy or something. She does that too,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily. In fact, the guy is himself a big issue in that film. So it's not entirely her story.
Hmm.
It's anyway, not not I'm not really here to talk about it, but Goodbye Petrushka, which is my first feature film, which is I am grateful for it because it's the film that allowed me to do Magnetosphere, and it's
Hmm.
out there. It's out there probably everywhere in the world now. Some
Yeah.
YouTube or something.
Yeah. It's just like, taking inspiration from things that you've
You have to draw,
experienced and
yeah, you have to draw inspiration from things, and then
yeah.
the rest has to be stuff you just friggin' make up. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Just create it.
Magnetosphere, right, right. Right. I
What were you
think
gonna
that's
say?
going to be, no, I think it's going to be the best writing. That's all. With Magnetosphere, there are little things there that are drawn from life, but they're like kind of negligible.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think that's important.
So one other thing I did want to ask,
Mm,
because and we kind of got like a little, so we're circling back a little bit,
quite okay.
um because you're mentioning like how you see, you approach it like a business, which I
I
think is
yeah.
really like an underrated approach. Like people, and I'm guilty of this too. Like I approach it like more from like the artistic sense, but it's true.
Mm.
Like if you want to like, if you're going the indie route and you like want to actually like make a career out of it, like you do have to have more of a business mindset. Can you like tell us a little bit? And we can use like Magnetosphere as an example. Like how, when you're thinking of a movie, like how do you think of it in a business sense?
Well, you always have to, assuming that the movie is made in the United States, you always
Mhm.
have to create an LLC, limited liability corporation, for any
Mhm.
folks at home who don't know, in order to, to have an entity that protects the film on your end. And there's legal that's attached to that. You always have a lawyer who looks over everything, who makes contracts for everybody who invests. Everybody who invests is a sort of partner in the business. They know that they may never get their money back because indie, but
Yeah.
they also know that they might, and that's the way you have to pitch it to them. You have to pitch it to them the way you would pitch, a business venture that you cannot 100% say will succeed, because that would be, I mean, you can do that, you can take that approach and just flat out lie and maybe get more money that way. But the thing is, when then you make $35 from the whole film once it's out, they're going to remember that call and be like, did you just not know what you were doing, or like, are you just a complete horrible liar that I never want to see again. So there's a delicate balance in how you have to approach that. You have to say, your investment in this film may end up being a donation, and you need to know that. We don't want it to be. We think it won't be. We hope it won't be, but we don't know that. So, here are the reasons that we think this film will succeed. Now, you have to go back home and decide whether you want to participate in this, knowing that you may never. And, speaking again of legal, our wonderful lawyer puts in the contracts, like, I'm going to say 800 times, bolded and underlined, no guarantee of return.
Right.
So those investors are a huge part of the business. The lawyer is a huge part of the business. The LLC, in Canada, it's called a single-use corporation. So because this film was Canadian, the LLC ended up working in tandem with the single-use corporation, which was based in Ontario, and did the same thing of protecting rights and holding rights to the script, for example, in Canada. Now, I cannot claim, because I was not on the business end of Magnetosphere for very long, I cannot claim to know everything about how it works, but I think that's a fairly accurate structure. That there are certain rights that are held by the LLC on the American side, and others pertaining to the script that are held on the Canadian side. And that's what allowed us to make the film in Canada, despite the fact that I'm not a citizen.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool.
This was a little more unnecessarily complicated business than some of them are. Goodbye Petrushka was just like one little LLC in the US, and it was me and my business partner, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a whole other side to filmmaking that doesn't really get talked about a lot. It is like super vital, I think.
Not really. I mean, yes, vital. Doesn't get talked about a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of like big picture, like future, when you are thinking of a story, when you're writing script, when you're directing the film, like, are you already thinking like, okay, I want to do like a festival run, or oh, I want to like see about what we can do for like distribution? Like, what is your thought process there?
Well, again, on Magnetosphere, I was really letting the producers take point on that, because that was at a point where I was both editing and dealing with health issues, but obviously I had always one eye on what was going on with festivals. And there are people out there who work as festival strategy consultants, and for a while we hired one, before realizing that for a film that's both silly and sad and both for families and not really specifically for families, it was almost impossible to place in a festival, because the feedback, usually you don't get any feedback, but I know some folks. So what I would hear is that, oh, we can't program family films. Nobody will come, or they would call it a kids film, which is like, it's just not fair, but whatever. This is not my place to say, but it's not, but it's not, but so what I heard many times was, we just can't program a children's film. We won't get anybody to come. It's like, we can't program a 2 p.m. film. And, in my mind, I'm always like, why not put it at 8 p.m. like a grown-up movie? But, that's me. That's just me. There were a couple film festivals, and I will mention them because I think they are out of this world. Not just because they took the film, although they both did, but I think they go above and beyond for their filmmakers to make sure that the experience is superb. And one of those is Real Abilities, which is a film fest for people with disabilities, or in synesthesia's case, it's not a disability, but like a different ability. Condition, whatever. Some people just say neurodivergence. I think we'll go with that. And they are based in New York City, and I could not have had more of a blast at that festival. It's just so well run. And the other is Dances with Films, which is in LA and now in New York as well. And they go above and beyond to make sure that every filmmaker has a wonderful time. And, you don't necessarily make like amazing connection. Well, you do make amazing connections, but it's more like you make friends. I think some film festivals are specifically for making industry connections, so that you guys can, trade cards, so to speak, and pursue your career with them and so forth. I think other film festivals, the atmosphere is a little more relaxed, and it's more like meeting other filmmakers, meeting maybe somebody who will DP your next film. You never know.
So you had those two wonderful film festivals, and now you're at San Diego Comic-Con as
Yeah,
well to promote the
yeah.
film.
That's our kind of grand finale in a way. I mean, we have one more screening in San Diego at the Central Library
Mhm.
after this, which is a free screening in August. But other than that, I would say this Comic Con screening is pretty much the last time that people can see Magnetosphere, on a big screen. Because we had a lot of those. We were lucky. We had several other festivals, all wonderful, by the way. I single out those two as if they're better than others. They're not. They're wonderful, but there are several others. Hamilton Film Festival in Canada, um, uh, Julian Dubuque Film Festival in Iowa. Um, there are others that are escaping me right now, but some wonderful. Oh, of course, the gentleman who's here at Comic Con, who arranged this screening.
Mhm.
Um, he heads up the San Diego and LA Children's Film Festivals, which are both really fun, full of both like professional and professionally made and kid made films, which is
Oh,
awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, I know your brain is still probably like totally focused on magnetosphere and
It's
like
oatmeal right
just
now.
well, I mean, I guess if you have an answer and if you're willing to share, like, do you
Yeah.
already kind of have like your next project brewing in your mind
I'm
or
afraid I don't. I
okay.
wish I did because by the time Goodbye Petrushka was finished, I was already telling people, yes, it's this film about a girl who has an extraordinary ability to see, hear
Yeah.
color. Um, I really didn't breathe between the two, which
Mhm.
is fine. I knew what I wanted to do next, and I was ready. In this case, I kind of need a break, and I've already taken 2 years off since I finished shooting Magnetosphere, which is not to say all the post production stuff and
Yeah.
editing, and so I mean that was going on into last year, so it hasn't been that long.
Mhm.
Um, like it started its film festival run of October last year, so it really hasn't been that long. We're still going,
Yeah.
technically. But now that the release has happened, I do have to think about that, and I feel like, I'm wired to be a director, and I know that because of other things it turned out I wasn't wired to be. And finding out I was a director wasn't like this is my destiny. I always wanted to direct. I didn't. It was an accident. And
Mhm.
that's how I found out, oh, like this is the best fit for me. Um but I might try just writing something next without directing. So yeah, we'll see. I It's hard to answer.
Yeah. Can you remind slash tell our audience where they can watch Magnetosphere?
Yes, absolutely. So Magnetosphere is available to watch on Amazon Prime and on Apple TV in North America. And there are a whole bunch of other um, channels as well.
So everybody who's listening slash watching, I'll have the link in the description so you guys can just click and find out directly where to see this movie because it really is like such like both sad and happy and sweet. It's such a lovely film.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hearing all the love for this film this past few days has really floored me. It's not that I was expecting something terrible, it's that I just had no like expectation necessarily. And it's not that you don't get the occasional like this sucks, you always get that, but and you always get the IMDb trolls who don't review, but they just click 1 star on every
Mhm.
movie that comes out, and there's like hundreds of them. This is crazy. They're so fun. It's like, I don't, what do they do all day? They do this. I
They
don't know.
just do that.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about that. But the ratings, the reviews have been really high. Not necessarily something I expected, but something I'm really grateful for because with indie films, any kind of exposure it can get can mean the world.
Yes. Yes. And honestly, again, congratulations. Like, it's very exciting to hear, it's out. It's screening at San Diego Comic-Con, which is like
Yep.
absolutely amazing. And it's getting great reviews, which it genuinely deserves. So
Thank you. And I
congratulations again.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we wrap up, one thing that I like to do, I like to ask every guest is
Yeah.
if there was like one major piece of advice that you would give to somebody, to a young girl who wants to break into the industry, what would that be?
Find a really trustworthy. I have two. I'm
Oh,
gonna go
you
back. I
can
have
you can
two.
share too. You can share both.
Yes. First of all, cultivate other interests besides just this one interest. Do not only be interested in breaking into the industry because that could break you. So, if we're talking about a young girl, and when I think young girl, I think of me wanting to break into the industry when I was like 13. That's a really ripe age for developing, cultivating other interests. I would say, you know, and this is true if you're a little older too, like have something on the side, also have like a science interest, also have like a sport, also have like a something, I don't know what, but don't let this be the one and only thing for you. I know it might be anyway, because I'm probably saying something that nobody can take as advice. If they want to do it, they're going to do it and you can't stop them. um Cultivate other interests outside of this. Also, this is the one that came to mind first, and it is easier said than done, but find a mentor who is trustworthy, who can lead you through the wilds of how to do this, because figuring it out on your own is possible, but it is made so much easier by the guidance of somebody who can say, oh, yeah, this is what to avoid, this is what to do, this is where to focus, this is where to put your energy, this is where to not waste energy, and so forth.
Love that. Love both of those. Thank you so much for sharing.
Off the top of my head.
No, thank you so much. Well, that's it for this episode of Film Like a Girl. Thank you again so much for joining us this month. This was like honestly such a lovely conversation. I
It
appreciate
was. Thank
everything.
you.
Yes, and again, everyone who's listening slash watching, links to Magnetosphere will be in the description, so you can go check it out and chat with you guys next month.
Thank you
Bye.
so much,
Thank
Catherine. Take
you.
care.
Take care.
All right.